deepest part of the ocean, and it was found during a record-breaking dive. The American explorer Victor Vescovo.
If you think humans have explored everything on our planet, you're dead wrong. There are places on Earth where human biology hits a hard wall, where the pressure feels like having an elephant balanced on your thumb, where the air turns extremely toxic, and where a single snapped cable can leave you buried alive forever. Scientists have tried to map them. Machines have been sent to reach them, but most of them either failed or never came back. In this video, we're counting down the top 10 deepest, most terrifying places on Earth that we are still afraid to explore. Let's dive in. Number 10. Woodingdean, Well, England. In 1858, in the hills near Brighton, England, a decision was made that looked simple on paper: dig a well, reach water, and supply a new industrial school. Nothing unusual for the time. But what followed slowly turned into something far more extreme than anyone expected. The work began in a narrow shaft, only about 1.2 meters wide. Barely enough space for a man to stand properly. Workers were lowered down in a wooden bucket, 2 men above turning the crank, 1 man below disappearing into darkness. The deeper they went, the more unnatural it felt. A single candle was their only light. At the start, engineers believed water would appear at around 120 meters. That was the plan. That was the promise. 200 meters, 300 meters. Still nothing but dry, solid chalk. White rock that refused to change, no matter how deep they forced their way through it. But they didn't stop digging. Tens of thousands of buckets of chalk were pulled up, one by one. It took 4 years of this repetition, men spending hours inside a space no wider than a small cabin, slowly losing sense of time and direction. In March 1862, the ground at the bottom started to shift. Then it gave way, and water suddenly burst into the shaft. After years of digging, they finally reached what they came for. The final depth was around 392 meters, far deeper than they expected when they started. They thought they were going deep at the time, but this was still just a shallow attempt compared to what humans would later discover beneath the ground. And the next place doesn't involve digging at all. It looks like calm water on the surface until you realize the floor simply disappears underneath you. Number 9. Dean's Blue Hole, Bahamas. From above, Dean's Blue Hole looks almost unreal, like a perfect dark circle cut into the ocean floor. It's located near Long Island in the Bahamas, in a calm bay west of Clarence Town. The surface is so still and clear, warm turquoise water, and then suddenly, nothing. One step forward, and the ground simply disappears. That drop goes straight down to about 202 meters. For the first 20 meters, everything feels normal. Then the structure changes without warning. The narrow opening suddenly expands into a massive underwater chamber, and the walls fall away into deeper space. Some divers have gone beyond 100 meters. At around 30 meters, the body stops fighting the descent and becomes negatively buoyant. From there, it turns into a silent drop. But the deeper it goes, the more the body is tested. At the bottom, pressure is more than 20 times the surface pressure, compressing the lungs into a fraction of their normal size. And then comes the real risk, the way back up. As pressure drops during ascent, oxygen in the blood can collapse without warning. A diver can black out just seconds before reaching the surface, even if everything felt fine moments earlier. It has already happened here. In 2013, diver Nicholas Mivoli completed a deep dive, reached the surface, spoke a few words, and then lost consciousness and died. What makes this place dangerous is not violence or chaos, it is the opposite. But far beyond this still water, There are places where the ground doesn't even form a hole. It opens into sinkholes so deep that even robots that were sent down to search for a bottom never came back. Number 8. El Zacaton, Mexico. From the surface, El Zacaton looks like a quiet green pool. It is located in Tamaulipas, Mexico. The water is dark green, almost still, but this is not a normal pool. It is the deepest water-filled sinkhole on Earth. Acidic water dissolved the rock from underneath until the surface collapsed inward, creating a vertical shaft filled with water. That uncertainty turned deadly in 1994 when legendary cave diver Shek Exley attempted to reach the bottom. At around 268 meters, something went wrong. He lost consciousness underwater and did not survive. The sinkhole was considered too dangerous. The steep walls scattered signals. For years, the bottom remained uncertain. Then, NASA sent a robot. A 1.5-ton autonomous machine called DepthX was lowered into the sinkhole. As it descended, it finally mapped the main floor at around 319 meters. But the real surprise came after that. The sonar detected side tunnels, branching horizontal passages carved into the rock, disappearing into darkness. The water became too harsh, too unstable, and the system had to pull back. So even with NASA technology, El Zacaton wasn't fully explored. But the next place on our list goes beyond sinkholes entirely. A cave in Europe, where explorers reached depths so extreme that their equipment stopped before the bottom was ever found. Number 7. Hranice Abyss, Czech Republic. This cave system is located near the town of Hranice, and unlike normal caves formed by rainwater cutting downward, this one was formed from below. Warm, mineral-rich water rises up from deep underground, slowly dissolving the limestone from the bottom up. And the deeper explorers go, the stranger it becomes. At first, visibility is normal. Then, just a few dozen meters down, the water turns dark and green, making movement and mapping extremely difficult. In 2016, a remote-operated robot descended into the abyss. It reached over 400 meters. Then something unexpected happened. The robot did not hit a floor. Years later, in 2022, a more advanced autonomous system went even deeper, reaching around 450 meters. Still, no bottom. The walls stayed vertical, and the shaft continued straight into darkness. Even more disturbing, the cable eventually ran out during one of the missions. The robot was still functioning, still recording, but it was left hanging in an open void, with nothing but black space below it. The water carries carbon dioxide and rare gases that suggest a direct connection to deep geothermal systems far below the crust. Some estimates even suggest it could go beyond 1,000 meters. So Hranice Abyss is not just deep, it is still open. But beyond this cave system in Europe, explorers kept moving deeper into mountain regions, where they found a cave system that drops over 2,000 meters straight down into the earth. Number 6. Krubera Cave, Georgia. In the mountains of the Gagra Range in Georgia, Krubera Cave doesn't look like something that should lead anywhere extreme. But once explorers enter it, the scale changes completely. This is not a short journey. It takes up to 4 weeks to reach the deepest sections. By 2004, Krubera Cave made history. It became the first cave on Earth to pass 2,000 meters in depth. To understand that scale, you could stack 5 Empire State Buildings underground and still not reach the surface. The cave is made of vertical shafts. One of the deepest sections, the Cascades Pit. A single mistake here cannot be recovered. Glacial melt from the Caucasus flows into the system, turning parts of the cave into freezing underground rivers. Explorers are forced to climb beside rushing water in total darkness. The temperature stays just above freezing. Communication is also limited. Radio signals cannot pass through solid rock. If that line breaks, they are completely cut off from the surface. For years, Krubera was considered the deepest cave in the world. It wasn't alone, because just nearby in the same mountain range, explorers found another opening in the rock. And what they discovered changed the record completely. Number 5. Veryovkina Cave, Georgia. This is the deepest cave system in the world. That alone is enough to unsettle anyone who understands what deep really means. But what lies inside is even harder to imagine. In the mountains of Georgia, Veryovkina Cave drops straight into the ground through a narrow opening. From there, it continues downward for over 2 kilometers of solid rock. At extreme depths, communication starts breaking completely. During some expeditions, teams have gone up to 3 days without any contact from the surface. If anything goes wrong in that window, the surface team has no way to know. Below 1,800 meters, the cave turns into completely unknown territory. No mapped routes, no clear structure, only unstable limestone, sharp rock edges, and massive boulder sections that can shift without warning. Explorers have to move slowly here. Many passages end suddenly, collapsing into narrow gaps that take hours to crawl through, only to lead nowhere. At nearly 2 kilometers underground, there is no natural sound left. Only breathing and footsteps remain, and even the human body becomes audible in the silence. In 2017, Veryovkina surpassed Krubera Cave, reaching a confirmed depth of 2,212 meters, just 13 meters deeper, but enough to become the deepest known cave on Earth. Conditions stay extreme throughout. Temperatures remain near freezing, and humidity stays at 100%. Inside the lowest sections, scientists have found blind cave organisms, life forms that evolved in total darkness over millions of years. Veryovkina represents the deepest point a human has ever physically reached inside the Earth. But the next place is not a cave system at all. It is a gold mine in South Africa, where humans descend not for exploration, but for survival in extreme heat deep underground. Number 4. Mponeng Gold Mine, South Africa. In South Africa, deep inside the Witwatersrand Basin, there is a place where the ground is not just deep. It feels engineered to reject human life. Mponeng Gold Mine is not a normal mine. It is a descent into the earth that starts with speed. Workers step into a double-deck elevator cage, and it drops at nearly 64 kilometers per hour into solid rock. The first stop comes at 2.3 kilometers, moving deeper through tilted tunnels below the surface. And here is where the real problem begins: heat. At that depth, the surrounding rock reaches about 66 degrees Celsius, and the air without cooling would become even worse. Hot enough to shut down the human body in minutes. This is why the entire mine survives on a forced artificial system. A surface plant produces massive amounts of ice, up to thousands of tons every day, which is pumped underground as freezing slurry. Huge fans push air across it, turning unbearable heat into something barely livable. If that system stops, the mine becomes unworkable almost immediately. But what makes Mponeng even stranger is not just engineering. It is what happens in the abandoned parts. Hidden in the dark are illegal miners, known as zama-zamas. They sneak into old or closed-off tunnels to look for leftover gold that the main mine has already stopped working on, because even small pieces of gold can mean survival or income for them. Mponeng proves something important. Humans can force life if everything is controlled, but that kind of control only works in rock. The next descent drops into open water, where pressure itself becomes the enemy. Number 3. Tonga Trench, Pacific Ocean. The Tonga Trench sits in the south Pacific Ocean, and it is one of the most extreme places ever mapped on Earth. A region called Horizon Deep. That is so deep that if Mount Everest was placed inside it, the peak would still remain hidden, but instead, they catch distorted, low-frequency sounds. Some feel like deep mechanical groans, others like sharp metallic sweeps moving through the water. Because sound travels so fast and so far underwater, the trench becomes a giant echo chamber, where even distant storms and underwater quakes get bent into strange, unrecognizable patterns. This place is also one of the most violent on Earth. The Pacific Plate is constantly forcing itself beneath another tectonic plate at high speed, making the entire region unstable. Earthquakes and sudden seabed shifts are common, which is why human exploration here is extremely limited compared to other deep ocean zones. The pressure reaches around 1,100 atmospheres, enough force to crush steel, glass, and any machine. Almost everything we know comes from robotic missions, and what they found is unsettling. The seafloor is not full of life like other trenches. Instead, it looks like a pale, empty desert of fine clay, constantly reshaped by violent movement. Even the sounds recorded here remain partly unexplained. Some may come from shifting rocks, some from gas vents, and some could even be unknown deep-sea life. But even with 10,882 meters down, it is only the second deepest point on our planet. Number 2. Challenger Deep, Pacific Ocean. At the bottom of the Mariana Trench, in a place called Challenger Deep, the ocean reaches its most extreme limit. The pressure here is almost impossible to imagine, around 1,000 times greater than at sea level. That comes out to roughly 8 tons pressing on every square inch. A human body here would not survive even a second in open exposure. The force would crush air pockets instantly, collapsing everything into a compact mass in milliseconds. This point lies in the western Pacific Ocean, near Guam, and drops to about 10,935 meters, the deepest known natural point on Earth. For a long time, this place was almost unreachable. In 1960, Jacques Piccard and Don Walsh made the first descent in the bathyscaphe Trieste, staying only briefly on the bottom. Later, in 2012, James Cameron completed a solo dive and filmed the alien-like floor. Today, with modern submersibles like Limiting Factor and Fendougé, dozens of dives have now reached this depth, but it still remains one of the most extreme environments ever visited. There is no light here, no warmth, just near-freezing water and absolute darkness. Yet even here, life exists. Thick microbial mats cover the seafloor, feeding on chemicals rising from below. Strange creatures like the snailfish and giant single-celled organisms survive in conditions that should destroy all biology. To the eye, it looks empty, like a pale, endless desert. But under that silence, it is alive in ways we are still trying to understand. But even reaching the deepest point on Earth, our list doesn't end, because there is something even more extreme, a place not carved by nature alone, but drilled directly into solid rock by human hands. Number 1. Kola Super Deep Borehole, Russia. In 1970, in the remote Kola Peninsula of Russia, scientists began a project that had nothing to do with oil, gas, or profit. It was pure curiosity. They wanted to drill deeper into the Earth than anyone had ever done before. What followed took almost 24 years. The drill, known as SG-3, slowly pushed through layers of rock, meter by meter, until it finally reached 12,262 meters below the surface. The deepest artificial point ever created by humans. But what they expected and what they found were very different. At around 6 kilometers down, they pulled up ancient microscopic fossils, plankton preserved inside solid rock for billions of years. And instead of the predicted solid basalt layer, they found fractured granite filled with hot, trapped water. Then came the real shock. At 12 kilometers deep, the temperature hit nearly 180 degrees Celsius, far hotter than anyone predicted. The rock itself stopped acting like solid stone. It became soft, almost plastic, slowly bending and closing in around the drill. And from that point on, going any further became impossible. Today, the hole is sealed with a heavy, rusted metal cap, quietly sitting in the frozen ground. And here is the fact that will suddenly change how you see this entire achievement. Even after 24 years of effort, humanity only reached about 0.2% of the way to the Earth's center. To put it simply, if the planet were the size of an apple, this entire drilling would barely scratch the outer skin. So these were 10 of the deepest places on Earth. Which one shocked you the most? And which one would you actually dare to explore? Let us know in the comments below. And if you made it to the end, you already know this channel is for you. Hit subscribe and turn on notifications. In the next video, we'll take you somewhere even more impossible. Until then, thanks for watching.